My name is Linda, and I spent my childhood in the star's glare. My older sister Ramona was that famous star. Uncles, aunts, cousins, and everyone in between would always descend upon our humble abode. They would throng our backyard like ants to a picnic, drawn by the promise of my mom's famous barbecue and the chance to witness Ramona perform. Our backyard offered the perfect setting for a movie, thanks to its manicured lawn and big oak tree. While Mom made sure everyone had something to drink, Dad would start the grill, filling the air with the aroma of charcoal and sizzling meat. "Ramona, sweetie," Aunt Marge would shout above the din. "Why don't you offer us a small song?" In an instant, everyone's attention would be directed towards my sister. With a mischievous twinkle in her eye and a flutter of golden hair, Ramona leaped onto a chair. Once she cleared her throat sharply, magic would happen. She would warble on and on, doing her best Celine Dion impersonation. In the spirit of a real concert, the grown-ups would go absolutely bonkers with their applause and cheers. While Mom and Dad would exude pride, Dad would occasionally wipe a tear from his eye. As a shrubberies dwelling individual, I would be off to one side. I wasn't trying to be part of it. It was only that whenever I tried to sing, it sounded like someone was strangling a cat. Also poetry. Put it out of mind. Words would clench in my mouth, causing me to stutter and look embarrassed. Rumor has it that I am very different from my sister, according to my relatives. The relatives weren't the only ones. It was very evident from Mom and Dad who the star of the family was. I was left to fend for myself as Ramona was escorted to various art seminars, singing sessions, and dance classes. Not that I gave it any consideration. The ancient, weathered volumes on our shelf brought me solace. Everyone else seemed to be confused, but Great Aunt Maggie seemed to get it. Behind the garage or in the treehouse, she would discover me with my head buried in a book. Leaning in close, she would ask, "What adventure are you on today, Linda?" in my presence. "Thank you for the interruption." I would search. "Oh, just reading about ancient Egypt," I would tell her while displaying the cover of my latest find. Nodding, Maggie's eyes would sparkle. "You seem to have a level mind, my dear. Nobody has the right to tell you otherwise." Spending time with Maggie was like a spiritual balm for me. She said I should pretend to be someone other than myself. Being around her would allow me to fully embody Linda, the introverted, bookish girl who, despite the chaos in her family life, preferred the tranquility of writing and reading. The pain of being the overlooked child would remain, even though I enjoyed those times. Whenever Ramona accomplished a new skill or gained an accolade, my parents would shower her with praise and presents, new clothing, the latest electronics, you name it. Is that so? I chose hand-me-downs and moaned with irritation. It was in school that I found solace. I found my groove in class, even though I wasn't exactly the class popular girl. I did not look forward to sitting quietly and letting the lessons wash over me. No, I vowed to myself that I would learn everything that my teachers covered. "Mrs. Thompson," I would address her with a level head following class. "Could you please elaborate on the part about mitosis one more time?" There was some ambiguity on my part. The fact that I was able to help her would make her smile broadly. "Of course, Linda, why not we discuss it together?" I would ask for suggestions for books if I knew a teacher was short on time. My backpack quickly started to overflow with additional reading items. I was determined to excel in every area, so I would stay up late studying those books. Everything worked out in the end. I was already the class leader when I was a senior in high school. I used to be really good at something. Even more surprisingly, I made acquaintances with fellow bookworms who understood and accepted my introversion. When graduation day approached, Ramona commandeered our home. As she worked on her portfolio to apply to the Advertising and Public Relations program at a prestigious university, her mother was her support. "Oh, honey, this campaign idea is perfect. Mom would be overjoyed to see Ramona's handiwork. You're so talented." The next thing I knew, I'd be sulking my way into my room to get some studying done. However, I had my meltdown during dinner with my family one night while we were discussing Ramona's college plans for the nth time. I'm going to college, too. The delivery of my speech was quite theatrical. I want to study management. There was a deafening silence after this. Then, to my utter horror and anguish, they broke out into laughter. To which Mom said, "Oh, sweetie," while she blinked away her eyes. "Regrettably, we do not have the funds to cover it. Get a job after you finish school. You just don't have the same level of talent as your sister." The blow was so hard it hurt. But I'm the top student in my class. I mumbled, my face hot with anger and humiliation. I get straight A's. I went to get my report card, which I promptly banged onto the table after returning to my room. Everyone leaned in to look, their mouths hanging open in amazement. "Well, I'll be damned," Dad muttered as he slouched against the stone floor. "When did this happen?" "It's been happening for years," I exclaimed. "Not that any of you ever noticed. It would take a lot of grace for even Mom to become embarrassed." "Linda, we had no idea." Regrettably, her father cut her off. "It doesn't do anything. You know, all of our savings have gone into Ramona's schooling. Nothing else is available to you, Linda. That is the reality, and I'm sorry to break it to you. My cousin Frank's restaurant will hire you when you graduate from college." Turning a blind eye to their cries, I took flight. Running upstairs, I banged on the door of my room till it rattled the walls. I sobbed hysterically and collapsed into my bed, feeling as though something inside of me had hardened. "All right," I whispered to myself as I tightened my grip on the phone. "If they decline to help, I will figure something out. Everyone will see Linda's skills demonstrated by me." Over the months that followed, a fog settled in. Before Ramona left for college, her parents said their heartfelt goodbyes and embraced her joyfully. My part, I recommitted myself to excelling academically and dived headfirst into my coursework. I remember spending more and more time with my great-aunt Maggie about this time. I used to go to her charming little house whenever things got rough at home. The topic I had been dreading was finally asked by her while we sipped our tea in her bright kitchen one day. "So, Linda," she inquired with a compassionate expression, "what are your intentions following your graduation?" Looking into my teacup, I forced myself to hold back tears. "My Aunt Maggie, I am not sure. College is out of my parents' financial reach. It is asserted that no funds remain following the payment of Ramona's tuition." Maggie took a few moments to collect herself before extending her arm across the table to grip my hand. "Linda, my spouse does have some savings. I would be happy to give them to you as a contribution to your college fund. You are really bright, and I will not waste your brilliance." The truth of what she said engulfed me. She was so sweet, and I realized in an instant that my dreams weren't dead. Both of these things made me cry hysterically. I let out a cry of gratitude as I dove headfirst into her. "Thank you so much, Aunt Maggie." Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand. As I surveyed the crowd, I couldn't help but notice Aunt Maggie's contagious smile. Along with me, my parents were there, and their reactions ranged from happy to nervous. I was looking through college brochures that night as my mom walked in. "Linda, honey," she said in a sweet, irresistible voice. "A relative of your father's, Frank, gave him a call. He thinks you'd be perfect for the role of waitress at his restaurant. What an exciting possibility." Took a long breath. "Most likely, Mom. I won't need that kind of work. I soon will be a college student." Dad scowled and left the door open. "And just exactly how are you going to pay for that?" "Aunt Maggie is helping me," I declared. "She's lending me her tuition savings." The way the startled stillness that followed was almost funny. Then, as Dad's cheeks heated with anger, I found it hard to believe. He said, shouting, "Absolutely not. Maggie should give Ramona her leftover money. She'll need a car for her advertising job after she grads next year." Hearing this seemed nonsensical to me. "Are you honest?" I had to spit. This is my chance to make something of myself and get an education. Try to be less egocentric, Mom advised Linda. Your sister more than you do needs that money. No, I said in a shaky but resolute voice. This money is covering my own college costs. Let the exchange finish. After that, things at home got unbearable. Either my parents would get mad with me over nothing, or they paid me no notice at all. There was a stifling sense of anxiousness. After a particularly explosive argument, I called Aunt Maggie crying and told the truth. "My darling, get ready to go," she said without second thought. "You're moving in with me." I loaded a cab the next day and drove away as I watched my childhood house fade in the rearview mirror. As I got to Aunt Maggie's house, a weight was taken off of my shoulders. In among all the craziness I was preparing for, I soon found myself strolling onto the State University grounds. Both my great academic performance and Aunt Maggie's gracious assistance helped me to be accepted into the management program of my aspirations. On the first day of classes, I felt almost weightless. As I sat there savoring everything in my introduction to business class, I couldn't help but think I made it. I really am in the here now. Ramona also had her final year at her fancy university set to start. She or my parents hadn't really spoken to me since I moved out, but I tried to brush it off. My fresh independence and the excitement of college life captivated me. Then, in the middle of the semester, Aunt Maggie called me. She said, sounding a little reluctant, "Linda, my dear, I believe you should sit down for this." My pulse accelerated when she informed me about the familial strife I had not known about. Ramona supposedly shocked everyone by coming up at home to declare she had left college early. And why is it also? On the way was a baby. Ramona had been carefree throughout, Aunt Maggie remarked. Tossing her hair, she had comforted him. "Oh, don't worry. Dad of this infant has plenty of money. We shall shortly be bidding each other wedding vows." Still, the story had barely started. Her partner lacked commitment, unlike Ramona's aspirations. Things started to go south as he learned she had an affair with his friend as well. About the father's identity, they remained in the dark. Aunt Maggie sighed heavily following that. I sat there with my phone pressed up to my ear while I attempted to absorb it all. I felt conflicted about it. The vibrant child had fallen from her seat. Still, I was mostly depressed for Ramona and the situation she had put herself in. The drama continued over the next many months. I stopped attending family gatherings, but Aunt Maggie kept me informed on all the most recent rumors. Ramona's boyfriend was indeed the biological father, according to a genetic test done upon her delivery. He agreed simply to pay child support, but Ramona had dreamed of a storybook marriage. The last straw came when my sister Ramona, desperate for work, took a job as a waitress at my Uncle Frank's restaurant, the same job my parents had tried to have me do. As I hung the phone, a whirl of emotions passed over me. A small, self-serving bit of me wanted to flaunt my accomplishment to my family. The main feeling was a great respect for my present circumstances and the improvement I had done. 4 years passed in a frenzy of homework, tests, and late-night studying. Walking across the stage at graduation, my management degree, which I had worked so hard for, was in hand. Glancing around the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie smiling at me with tears in her eyes. Thanks to my great grades and strong teacher recommendations, I was able to land a job as manager at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, the Gilded Fork. The salary exceeded my wildest hopes, and I felt a sense of success never before known. Once I received my first pay, I had a very definite strategy. I went to the electronics store for Aunt Maggie and found the newest type of smartphone. Her face cleared as soon as I handed it to her. "Oh, Linda," she said, her breath seized as she turned the sleek device over in her hands. "This is too much." Grinning broadly, I grabbed for my own phone. "Certainly not. Let me show you now its use." In the next weeks, I taught Aunt Maggie everything about social networking. She adjusted fast, especially with reference to Facebook's video function, which she found quite helpful. Her page was soon showing films of her garden, cat, and the now famous apple pie. I would watch her videos and continuously push the like or comment button while at lunch. It let us stay in touch even with my busy work calendar. One of my phones beeped at me once as I prepared dinner for the guests. Looking quickly, I was startled to see my mother's name on display. Our most recent exchange occurred years ago. She responded, seeming slightly uncomfortable, "We were hoping you might come over to talk." I nodded after a rather long pause. Standing at the doorbell of my boyhood house, I discovered Sunday, my fingers hesitating over the door. The door opened just as I was ready to push it. As she tightly embraced me, my mom screamed out, "Linda." "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I found my dad, Ramona, and a toddler. I assumed the small child to be my niece. Though not confrontational, as I had expected, tensions were high. Dad said, in a harsh but friendly manner, "You look good, kiddo. We hear you are doing well for yourself." Nodding and stayed wary. "I am, indeed. Right now, I work at the Gilded Fork." The name of the eatery stunned them. Mom had throat clearing. "That is quite beautiful, my sweetheart. We wanted to talk to you about it, actually." Apologizing for their treatment of me, they spent the next hour admitting they were foolish to overlook my skills. The real motive for the get-together became clear then. Ramona's mother, Linda, said, we were wondering if you could help Ramona get a job at your restaurant." I turned to see my sister cradling our daughter in her arms. She looked away from me. At last I said, "I'll do my best. No promises, but I'll ask." Keeping my word, I spoke with Ramona's diner owner, Mr. Reeves, about her. When he agreed to let her attempt her hand at administration, I was surprised. The week following that Ramona started, though I was half expecting her to cause chaos or bomb, she performed an amazing job. Her efficiency and charm won her over clients. The weeks passed, and I started to relax whenever she was around. Though we didn't become best friends, we got along wonderfully at work. The universe tossed me still another curveball. This one, nice one, right when I thought I had everything under control. I was called to Mr. Reeves's office finally. My heart started to race from worry of maybe messing things. He gave me a smile instead and said, "Linda, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Not long after, I was in charge of the great opening of 3 restaurants. My days consisted mostly in meetings with colleagues, food tasting, and numerical analysis. It was exhilarating and taxing. I had never encountered anything like it. The rise that goes along with the promotion has caused me to have more money than I can manage. That's when my parents started phoning. Its problems began small at first. Mom would say, "The roof is leaking," with a hesitant note in her voice. "We were wondering whether you might be able to assist somewhat." Surprisingly, answering yes and lending them a small wire transfer of money felt fantastic. Starting with the roof and working towards a new water heater, I found myself bearing the tab for a full house remodel. Thanks in great part to my monthly payment, the infamous family parties started once their financial situation improved. That was different, though, when I visited this time. "Have you heard about Linda's most current endeavor?" Grandma would boast to her extended relatives. "Downtown, she is starting a new restaurant. What an amazing success it is." Ramona would smile at me sometimes from across the room when I caught her eye. She was also doing rather well after rising to top administrator at the Gilded Fork. "My girls," Dad would say, looping all around with an arm. 2 of them making their old man proud. Though I wanted to hang on to my resentment and remind them of how they handled me in the past, I also appreciated their kind welcome, something I had longed for. That evening as I drove home, I was bursting with delight. After all these years, I at last reached my lifetime objectives, career achievement, and the love and encouragement of my dear ones. I was a strong, autonomous woman in my own right, not just the beloved golden child. One Sunday afternoon, while I was unwinding, everything in my life collapsed. As I was drinking coffee and surfing Facebook, Aunt Maggie's most recent video caught my eye. Work had caused me to skip one family reunion. Grinning from ear to ear, I set play in motion, expecting the traditional happy sequences. The scene I saw instead set my heart racing. My parents were shown there, vividly detailed and flushed with wine and pride. Mom's explosive gestures were clear even if her voice was slurred. And Linda, that unappreciative little freeloader, she was whispering. Her giving is simply amazing. You know, we have not very much money. Dad cut in, his cheeks reddened. Indeed, I do grasp. We're thriving because of Ramona. That fancy restaurant's lifeblood is her. Linda just carries on her legacy. As the movie went on, some family members nodded in agreement, and a few even spoke their minds. Ramona, seated in the corner, seemed uncomfortable, but did not confront them immediately. I stayed still all through the video. In what ways might they accomplish this? After all I had done for them and the money I had given them, why would they go and say such terrible lies? I shook as I moved my cursor to the part on remarks. I could see my parents' ceaseless texting there. Please straightaway delete this video, Maggie. Putting this up was absolutely illegal. Destroying it straight away. But Aunt Maggie's response sent me off crying uncontrollably. I still wouldn't even if I knew how to get movies deleted. Everyone has to see the reality about your treatment of Linda. Is this your approach of expressing gratitude for all the support she has given you? I regret both of you. I watched the movie repeatedly, reading the comments for what seemed like an age. The treachery tore at my heart, opening scars I thought had healed. Finally, I reached for my phone and gave Aunt Maggie a call. "Oh, Linda, sweetheart," she said in a sympathetic voice. "I take it you seen the video?" "Yeah," I said, my voice strange from crying. Aunt Maggie still finds it unbelievable. How did they achieve that? She answered with such fury in her voice. "This is Linda's usual state. You simply haven't had chance to see it. I'm sorry it happened to you. Maybe this is the best way you found out. You should get the truth." Aunt Maggie supported me for hours as I negotiated my emotional roller coaster of shock, anger, and sorrow. As evening fell, I chose. "I'm cutting them off," I told Aunt Maggie, my voice steady even if the pain in my chest was raging. "No more funding or help. Now they are ready to curl up on their just-constructed bed." Following the disclosure of the tape came some of my toughest days. Though my phone buzzed incessantly, I couldn't bring myself to answer my folks' calls and messages. Their comments, harshness, and falsehoods kept me from sleeping. After a week of no reaction, I at last sent them a brief, icy message. "I watched the film. I know just how you really see me. You won't be contacting me ever more. Right now, all funds are off the agenda." Their responses came flooding in right away. They initially expressed regret. "Linda, sweetheart, we really apologies. We never meant any of it. We really apologies." Their perspective changed, though, as time passed and I kept quiet. "We are the parents of you. Our debt rests with you." I stayed constant as every note twisted the knife. They flipped the script on me with every chance I presented them. The cycle has to be broken. For whatever reason, Ramona decided not to participate. She was a firm asset and the model of a conscientious worker. If she believed that we had financially exploited our parents, she did not seem to be hostile to us. We maintained a polite but detached relationship. "I'm not taking sides," she told me the day following a staff conference. "That falls between you and them." I nodded in thanks for her objectivity, even though I had thought she would defend me. Understood, she was already troubled over her own child. Over many weeks and months, I began to rely rather heavily on Aunt Maggie. Our Sunday video talks kicked off the most fun portion of my week. She would bring some much-needed order by regaling me with stories of her garden or most recent attempt into baking as my life sank into total anarchy. Every time I started to doubt, "You're doing the right thing, Linda," she would reassure me, "Don't let them run your life anymore." More remarkably still, additional relatives began contacting as well. My cousin Sarah sent me a lovely email. She had always been friendly at our family get-togethers. "I watched the film. I simply wanted you to know you are amazing, Linda. Your achievements and the good influence you have had on other people are really outstanding. Nobody is entitled to tell you differently. Dad's brother, Uncle Bob, called me out of the blue. I have seen you grow into a remarkable woman, darling. If your parents fail to recognize your special value, they are totally blinded. Your loved ones support you. Think about this." Reading these hopeful notes helped my damaged heart heal. Though I had to bid farewell to my parents, I had discovered a family that loved and welcomed me just as I was. Mr. Reeves asked me to his office in the last days of the year. Walking in nervous, I wondered if the tension from my personal life had affected my output. Instead, he smiled broadly and said, "Linda, I will be retiring next year. Kindly take on the position of restaurant chain chief executive officer." Frozen in disbelief, I stayed exactly where. Long last, I choked out, "Are you confident?" His eye gleamed, then he nodded. "I never have been more sure about anything in all my years. Linda, this is yours for the grab. You have helped this firm to flourish. You have to rise and take leadership." As I left his office, a shocking insight hit me. My head spun with several options. She had exceeded not only everyone's but even her own expectations, having developed from a small child who had been ignored and devalued.